Hypnotic Negotiation, Mastering the Art of Persuasion with Hypnosis Techniques. Chapter Title Summary 1 Introduction to Hypnotic Negotiation provides an overview of the book and introduces the concept of hypnotic negotiation as a powerful persuasion technique in negotiations. 2 Understanding Hypnosis Techniques explores the fundamentals of hypnosis, including its history, principles, and applications in negotiation settings. 3 Preparing for Hypnotic Negotiation discusses the necessary preparations and mindset for effective hypnotic negotiation, including building rapport, setting goals, and managing expectations. 4 Hypnotic Language Patterns explains various language patterns and techniques used in hypnotic negotiation, such as embedded commands, presuppositions, and metaphors, and how to apply them in a negotiation context. 5 Hypnotic Techniques for Building Trust focuses on specific hypnotic techniques that can be used to establish and enhance trust with the negotiation counterpart, including creating rapport, using pacing and leading, and eliciting positive emotions. 6 Hypnotic Techniques for Persuasion provides practical guidance on using hypnosis techniques for persuasion in negotiations, including anchoring, reframing, and using hypnotic suggestions to influence outcomes. 7 Hypnotic Techniques for Overcoming Objections addresses common objections and resistance in negotiations and offers hypnotic techniques to overcome them, such as reframing objections, utilizing metaphors, and changing belief systems. 8 Ethical Considerations and Best Practices discusses ethical considerations when using hypnotic techniques in negotiations, including consent, transparency, and potential pitfalls to avoid. Provides best practices for responsible and effective use of hypnotic negotiation techniques. 9 Real-world applications of hypnotic negotiation provides real-world case studies and examples of how hypnotic negotiation techniques have been applied successfully in various negotiation scenarios, such as sales, business deals, and conflict resolution. 10 Advanced Topics in Hypnotic Negotiation explores advanced topics in hypnotic negotiation, such as using hypnosis in long-term relationships, dealing with difficult negotiation counterparts, and enhancing negotiation skills through self-hypnosis and self-awareness. 11 Conclusion summarizes the key concepts and highlights of the book and provides concluding remarks on the power of hypnotic negotiation as a persuasive tool in negotiations. Here are some important questions to consider when learning from the book Hypnotic Negotiation, Mastering the Art of Persuasion with Hypnosis Techniques. 1. What is the history and background of hypnosis, and how can it be applied in negotiation settings? 2. What are the key principles and techniques of hypnosis that can be utilized in negotiations to enhance persuasion skills? 3. How can I effectively prepare for hypnotic negotiation, including building rapport, setting goals, and managing expectations? 4. What are the specific language patterns and techniques used in hypnotic negotiation, and how can I apply them in a negotiation context? 5. How can I use hypnotic techniques to build trust with my negotiation counterpart and establish a positive rapport? 6. What are the ethical considerations when using hypnotic techniques in negotiations, and how can I ensure responsible and ethical use of these techniques? 7. How can I overcome objections and resistance in negotiations using hypnotic techniques, and how can I reframe objections or change belief systems effectively? 8. What are some real-world applications of hypnotic negotiation techniques in sales, business deals, conflict resolution, and other negotiation scenarios? 9. What are some advanced topics in hypnotic negotiation, such as dealing with difficult negotiation counterparts or enhancing negotiation skills through self-hypnosis and self-awareness? 10. How can I apply the concepts and techniques learned from the book to my own negotiation situations, and how can I practice and refine my hypnotic negotiation skills? These questions can serve as a guide to help you engage critically with the material in the book, deepen your understanding of hypnotic negotiation techniques, and apply them effectively in your own negotiation situations. It's important to read the book thoroughly, take notes, and reflect on how the concepts and techniques can be applied in your specific context to maximize their potential benefits. 1. Hypnosis, the state of altered consciousness or trance-like state in which an individual becomes highly responsive to suggestions, allowing for changes in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. 2. Negotiation, the process of reaching a mutually acceptable agreement or resolution between two or more parties with different interests, needs, or goals. 3. Persuasion, the act of influencing or convincing others to adopt a particular belief, opinion, or behavior through communication and manipulation of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. 4. Hypnotic techniques, strategies, methods, or tools used to induce and utilize hypnotic states or principles in negotiations, such as language patterns, suggestion techniques, anchoring, and rapport building. 5. Art of persuasion, the skill and ability to effectively influence others using various techniques, strategies, and communication styles to achieve desired outcomes. 6. Communication, the exchange of information, ideas, and messages between individuals or parties, including verbal and nonverbal cues, active listening, and effective questioning. 7. Subconscious mind, the part of the mind that operates below the level of conscious awareness and influences thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, often targeted in hypnotic techniques for persuasion. 8. Anchoring, a psychological phenomenon where a particular stimulus or cue is associated with a specific emotional or behavioral response, often used in hypnotic negotiation to influence decision-making. 9. Rapport, a state of harmonious connection or understanding between individuals, often established through building trust, empathy, and understanding, important in establishing influence and persuasion. 10. Ethics, the moral principles and values that guide human behavior and decision-making, including considerations of fairness, responsibility, and integrity in the context of negotiation and persuasion. Title: The Hypnotic Heist. It was a moonless night in the bustling city, and Johnny the Fixer was preparing for his biggest heist yet. He had been planning this for months, carefully orchestrating every detail to perfection. As a seasoned mobster in the 1920s, he knew that sometimes brute force wasn't enough. This time, he needed something extra, something that would give him the upper hand. Johnny had heard whispers about a mysterious hypnotist who could put people in a deep trance-like state, making them highly responsive to suggestions. He was intrigued and decided to seek out this hypnotist, known as the Maestro, for help with his heist. The Maestro was notorious for his mastery of hypnosis, and Johnny was willing to do whatever it took to gain his assistance. He arranged a meeting in a dimly lit speakeasy, where the Maestro performed his mesmerizing acts on stage. As Johnny sat in the audience, he watched in awe as the Maestro put volunteers into a state of hypnosis. Their eyes glazed over, and their bodies became limp as they followed the Maestro's commands without question. Johnny was captivated and knew that this was exactly what he needed to ensure the success of his heist. After the show, Johnny approached the Maestro with a proposition. He explained his plan to rob a rival mobster's casino and offered a generous sum of money in exchange for the Maestro's services. The Maestro was intrigued by the challenge and agreed to help. On the night of the heist, Johnny and his crew put the Maestro's hypnotic techniques to the test. They infiltrated the casino, and with the Maestro's guidance, they hypnotized the guards, making them highly responsive to suggestions. They bypassed security measures effortlessly, as the Maestro's hypnotic commands controlled the guards' thoughts and actions. With the casino under their control, Johnny and his crew cleaned out the vault, taking the mobsters' illicit gains. The heist went off without a hitch, thanks to the Maestro's hypnotic abilities. As they made their escape, Johnny couldn't help but marvel at the power of hypnosis. It had allowed him to achieve the impossible, and he was grateful for the Maestro's assistance. He paid the Maestro handsomely and disappeared into the night, leaving no trace behind. In the aftermath, the rival mobster was left baffled, unable to comprehend how his casino had been robbed with seemingly no resistance. Johnny's reputation as a mastermind grew, and he became a legend in the underworld. But little did he know, the Maestro had one final suggestion for him. A subtle post-hypnotic command that would linger in Johnny's subconscious, ensuring his loyalty to the Maestro whenever he heard a specific trigger phrase. The hypnotic heist had been a success, but Johnny was now under the Maestro's control, forever indebted to the power of hypnosis. The Maestro's influence extended far beyond the heist, and Johnny had unwittingly become a pawn in a much larger game, all because of the hypnotic state that had changed the course of his life. Title: The Negotiation Game. In the midst of the Prohibition era, mobsters ruled the streets with their illegal bootlegging operations. One of the most notorious mob bosses in the city was Vincent the Viper Moretti, known for his shrewd business acumen and ruthless tactics. But when a valuable liquor shipment went missing, tensions between the Viper and rival mobster, Tony the Bull Russo, reached a boiling point. Fearing an all-out war, the two mob bosses agreed to a negotiation to resolve the dispute. The meeting was set in a smoky speakeasy, with their trusted lieutenants by their sides. The negotiation began, with both sides fiercely advocating for their own interests. The Viper was determined to get compensation for the lost liquor, while the Bull insisted on his innocence and refused to pay for something he didn't take. The atmosphere was tense, with each side trying to outwit the other. As the negotiation progressed, the Viper employed his keen business acumen, using persuasive arguments and calculated moves to gain an advantage. He was well versed in the art of negotiation, knowing when to push, when to yield, and when to hold firm. He skillfully used his knowledge of the bull's vulnerabilities to apply pressure and maneuver the negotiation in his favor. But the bull was no pushover. He was known for his fierce temper and uncompromising stance. He countered the viper's moves with his own strategic maneuvers, refusing to back down despite the mounting pressure. Hours turned into the night, and the tension in the room was palpable. The negotiation became a game of wit and tactics, with neither side willing to give in easily. It was a battle of negotiation skills, as both mob bosses tried to outmaneuver each other. After several intense rounds of negotiation, both sides finally reached a mutually acceptable agreement. The viper would receive partial compensation for the lost liquor, and the bull would publicly acknowledge his innocence. It wasn't a perfect outcome for either side, but it was a resolution that avoided bloodshed and maintained a fragile peace in the city. As the negotiation concluded, the viper and the bull exchanged firm handshakes, a sign of begrudging respect for each other's negotiation skills. They knew that they had played a high-stakes game, and in the end, it was their ability to negotiate that had saved them from a costly and deadly conflict. As they left the speakeasy, the viper couldn't help but reflect on the power of negotiation. It was a skill that had served him well in his mobster empire, allowing him to resolve disputes, strike profitable deals, and maintain his grip on power. He knew that negotiation was not just about brute force, but about understanding the interests, needs, and goals of all parties involved, and finding a mutually acceptable solution. In the world of mobsters, negotiation was not just a means to an end, but a strategic game that could mean the difference between life and death. The viper had mastered the art of negotiation, and it was a skill that he would continue to use to navigate the treacherous underworld of the 1920s mobster scene, always staying one step ahead of his rivals. Title: The Hypnotic Gambit. In the roaring 1920s, the mobsters of New York City were always on the lookout for new ways to gain an edge in their negotiations. One notorious mob boss, Johnny the Snake Russo, was known for his mastery of hypnotic techniques, which he used to manipulate his rivals and expand his criminal empire. One day, the Snake received a tip about a rival mobster, Frankie the Hammer Martino, who had plans to take over his territory. Determined to thwart Frankie's scheme, the Snake devised a cunning plan that involved using hypnotic techniques in their next negotiation. The negotiation was set in an abandoned warehouse, with their respective lieutenants standing guard. As the negotiation began, the Snake used his smooth-talking skills, coupled with his extensive knowledge of hypnotic techniques, to create a trance-like state in Frankie. He carefully used language patterns, suggestion techniques, anchoring, and rapport building to influence Frankie's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Frankie, unaware of the Snake's hypnotic manipulation, found himself becoming highly responsive to the Snake's suggestions. He was swayed by the Snake's persuasive arguments, and his guard slowly dropped. The Snake skillfully exploited this advantage, steering the negotiation in his favor, and gaining concessions from Frankie that he would have never agreed to otherwise. As the negotiation progressed, the Snake continued to use his hypnotic techniques to keep Frankie under his spell. He used anchoring to trigger positive emotions in Frankie whenever he mentioned his terms, and he built rapport by mirroring Frankie's body language and speech patterns. The hypnotic gambit was working perfectly, and the Snake was inching closer to victory. However, Frankie's lieutenant, Tony the Bulldog DeMarco, was suspicious of the Snake's tactics. He had seen the signs of hypnotic manipulation and tried to snap Frankie out of his trance. But the Snake was quick to notice the interference and countered with more powerful hypnotic techniques, diverting Tony's attention and keeping Frankie under his control. As the negotiation drew to a close, the Snake had secured a highly favorable agreement, thanks to his masterful use of hypnotic techniques. Frankie, still under the influence of the Snake's suggestions, shook hands with the Snake, sealing the deal. But as they left the warehouse, Tony confronted Frankie about his suspicious behavior during the negotiation. Realizing that he had been manipulated, Frankie was furious and confronted the Snake. The Snake, confident in his skills, admitted to using hypnotic techniques, but brushed off Frankie's anger, knowing that the negotiation had already been concluded in his favor. From that day on, the Snake's reputation as a master of hypnotic negotiation spread throughout the mobster circles. His rivals learned to be wary of his hypnotic gambit, and the Snake continued to use his powerful techniques to solidify his position as one of the most feared mob bosses in the city, always staying one step ahead of his rivals with his hypnotic prowess. Title: The Subconscious Game. In the gritty streets of Chicago during the Prohibition era, mobsters ruled with an iron fist. One notorious mob boss, Jimmy the Fixer Malone, was known for his uncanny ability to tap into the subconscious mind of his rivals, using it to gain an unfair advantage in negotiations. One day, the fixer received word that a rival gang led by Tony the Blade Rossi was encroaching on his territory. Determined to maintain his dominance, the fixer hatched a plan to use hypnotic techniques to sway Tony and his crew in their next negotiation. The meeting was set in a dimly lit speakeasy, with tensions running high. The fixer, a master of hypnotic techniques, carefully crafted his approach. He used language patterns, suggestion techniques, and rapport building to create a subtle yet powerful influence on Tony's subconscious mind. As the negotiation began, the fixer smoothly used his skills to target Tony's subconscious mind. He planted suggestions that influenced Tony's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, all below the level of conscious awareness. Tony, unaware of the fixer's tactics, found himself slowly being swayed, as if his own thoughts and desires were leading him towards the fixer's terms. The fixer continued to manipulate Tony's subconscious mind throughout the negotiation. He used anchoring to trigger positive emotions whenever Tony showed signs of resistance, and he skillfully exploited Tony's vulnerabilities and desires to further his own agenda. The subconscious game was in full swing, and the fixer was playing it masterfully. As the negotiation progressed, Tony's crew, under the fixer's hypnotic influence, began to shift their loyalty towards the fixer. Tony, unaware of the subtle manipulation, became more and more amenable to the fixer's terms. He couldn't explain why he was suddenly so cooperative, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the fixer's proposals were his own ideas. In the end, the fixer emerged victorious. He secured a highly favorable agreement, thanks to his skillful use of hypnotic techniques targeting Tony's subconscious mind. Tony, still unaware of the manipulation, shook hands with the fixer, sealing the deal. But as Tony and his crew left the speakeasy, one of his trusted lieutenants, Frankie, couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that something was off. He had noticed subtle changes in Tony's behavior during the negotiation and began to suspect foul play. He confronted Tony about his sudden change of heart, and after careful reflection, Tony realized that he had been manipulated by the fixer. Enraged, Tony sought revenge against the fixer, but the fixer was always one step ahead. He had already solidified his dominance in the city, thanks to his mastery of hypnotic techniques and his ability to influence the subconscious mind. From that day on, the fixer's reputation as a formidable mob boss grew, and he continued to use his hypnotic prowess to stay ahead in the ruthless world of organized crime, always playing the subconscious game to his advantage. Title: The Anchor Deal. In the roaring 1920s, the city of New York was a hotbed of organized crime. One notorious mobster, Johnny the Shark Sullivan, was known for his cunning negotiation skills, particularly his masterful use of anchoring to get what he wanted. One day, the Shark received an invitation from a rival mobster, Mickey the Hammer Thompson, to meet at a speakeasy in the heart of the city. The two were vying for control over the lucrative bootlegging business, and tensions were high. As the Shark arrived at the speakeasy, he was greeted by the Hammer and his menacing entourage. The negotiations began, and the Shark wasted no time in employing his anchoring techniques. He used a specific cue, a gold pocket watch, which he repeatedly associated with positive emotions and desirable outcomes during the negotiation. With every offer he made, the Shark would subtly flash the gold pocket watch, anchoring it to the positive emotions he wanted the Hammer to associate with his proposals. He used language patterns, gestures, and visual cues to reinforce the anchoring, creating a powerful psychological effect on the Hammer's decision-making process. As the negotiation progressed, the Hammer found himself drawn to the gold pocket watch, unknowingly being influenced by the anchored cues. He began to associate the watch with positive outcomes and favorable terms, and his resistance began to crumble. The Shark continued to anchor the watch to his proposals, skillfully manipulating the Hammer's emotions and behaviors. He used the anchored cues to trigger positive responses and reinforce his agenda, while the Hammer became more pliable, unable to resist the psychological influence. In the end, the Shark successfully secured a favorable agreement, thanks to his mastery of anchoring techniques. The Hammer, still under the subtle sway of the anchored cues, shook hands with the Shark, sealing the deal. But as the Hammer and his entourage left the speakeasy, he couldn't shake off the feeling of being manipulated. He realized that he had fallen victim to the Shark's anchoring tactics, and he vowed to learn from his mistake and come back stronger. Meanwhile, the Shark walked away victorious, having used his anchoring skills to his advantage once again. His reputation as a shrewd negotiator grew, and he continued to dominate the bootlegging business in the city, always using his mastery of anchoring to anchor his deals in his favor. The anchor deal had sealed his success, and he continued to thrive in the ruthless world of mobsters during the Prohibition era. What is hypnosis and how can it be used in negotiation to influence thoughts, feelings, and behaviors? In the smoky back room of a speakeasy in 1920s New York City, Frankie the Fixer was known for his sharp wit and silver tongue. As a notorious mobster, he had mastered the art of negotiation and was always looking for ways to gain an advantage. One day, Frankie heard whispers about a mysterious hypnotist who had recently arrived in town. Intrigued, he decided to seek out this Dr. Mesmer and learn more about his skills. Frankie found Dr. Mesmer performing in a small, dimly lit theater, captivating the audience with his mesmerizing voice and hypnotic techniques. Intrigued, Frankie approached him after the show, curious to learn how hypnosis could be used in negotiation. Dr. Mesmer explained that hypnosis was a state of altered consciousness or trance-like state in which an individual becomes highly responsive to suggestions. He described how it could be used to influence thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, making it a powerful tool in negotiation. Intrigued, Frankie struck a deal with Dr. Mesmer. He asked the hypnotist to teach him the art of hypnosis so that he could use it to gain an edge in his negotiations with rival mob bosses and law enforcement officials. Under Dr. Mesmer's tutelage, Frankie learned various hypnotic techniques, including language patterns, suggestion techniques, anchoring, and rapport building. He practiced his newfound skills in real-world negotiation situations, using them to influence his counterpart's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. In one particular negotiation, Frankie was up against a rival mob boss who was known for his tough demeanor. Using his hypnotic techniques, Frankie was able to create a deep rapport with the rival boss, establishing anchoring cues that triggered specific emotional responses. He skillfully used language patterns and suggestion techniques to influence the rival boss's perceptions and behaviors, leading to a favorable outcome for Frankie. As word spread of Frankie's hypnotic negotiation skills, his reputation grew, and he became a force to be reckoned with in the underworld. He continued to refine his hypnotic techniques, always staying one step ahead of his adversaries. However, Frankie also learned that hypnosis had its ethical considerations and limitations. He used his skills responsibly, never crossing the line into unethical or illegal territory. In the end, Frankie's mastery of hypnosis became his secret weapon in the world of mobsters and negotiations. He successfully used it to influence thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, gaining the upper hand and solidifying his position as a formidable mobster in the 1920s era of organized crime. Language patterns. In the bustling streets of Chicago during the Prohibition era, Tommy the Tongue was known for his silver tongue and quick wit. He was a rising star in the world of organized crime, always looking for new ways to gain an advantage over his rivals. One day, Tommy stumbled upon a hidden gem in the city, a small, dimly lit library tucked away in an alley. Intrigued, he ventured inside and discovered a book on hypnosis techniques. One particular concept caught his eye: language patterns. As Tommy delved deeper into the book, he learned that language patterns were strategic ways of using words and phrases to influence thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. He was fascinated by the idea of using language as a tool to gain an upper hand in negotiations. Tommy began studying different language patterns and practicing them in his interactions with others. He learned how to use embedded commands, presuppositions, and other linguistic techniques to subtly influence his counterpart's perceptions and decisions. One night, Tommy found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with a rival mob boss, Tony the Hammer. Tony was known for his tough demeanor and was not easily swayed. But Tommy was armed with his newfound knowledge of language patterns. He skillfully used embedded commands in his sentences, subtly implanting suggestions in Tony's mind. He strategically used presuppositions to make certain assumptions seem inevitable. He also employed ambiguity and double binds to create confusion and leverage in the negotiation. Tony was unaware of Tommy's linguistic tactics, but he found himself compelled to agree with Tommy's proposals. Tommy's language patterns were working their magic, and he was gaining the upper hand in the negotiation. As the negotiation progressed, Tommy continued to use his language patterns to steer the conversation in his favor. He was able to influence Tony's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without Tony even realizing it. In the end, Tommy emerged victorious from the negotiation, thanks to his mastery of language patterns. He had gained the advantage he sought and solidified his reputation as a skilled negotiator and mobster in the 1920s underworld. Tommy's success with language patterns became a legend in the mobster world, and he continued to use this powerful tool to navigate his way through the dangerous and competitive landscape of organized crime in the 1920s. His mastery of language patterns proved to be an invaluable asset, helping him stay ahead of his rivals and establish himself as a force to be reckoned with in the world of mobsters during the Prohibition era. Suggestion techniques. In the smoky back rooms of New York City, Joey the Shark was a respected figure in the world of mobsters during the 1920s. He had a knack for getting what he wanted, and he was known for his suave demeanor and cunning ways. One day, Joey found himself in a tight spot. He needed to strike a deal with a rival gangster, Vinny the Viper, to expand his territory. But Vinny was notorious for being stubborn and resistant to any form of persuasion. Determined to find a way to sway Vinny to his side, Joey turned to his mentor, an older mobster known as Wise Tony. Wise Tony was known for his expertise in suggestion techniques, and Joey hoped to learn a thing or two from him. Wise Tony took Joey under his wing and taught him the art of suggestion techniques. He explained how suggestions could be used to influence thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in subtle but powerful ways. Joey learned about different types of suggestion techniques, including direct suggestions, indirect suggestions, and embedded suggestions. He practiced using suggestive language patterns, tone of voice, and body language to make his suggestions more persuasive. Armed with his newfound knowledge, Joey approached Vinny for the crucial negotiation. He carefully applied the suggestion techniques he had learned from Wise Tony, using direct suggestions to plant ideas in Vinny's mind, indirect suggestions to create a favorable atmosphere, and embedded suggestions to subtly influence Vinny's decision-making. Vinny initially resisted Joey's overtures, but Joey persisted, skillfully using suggestion techniques to gradually sway Vinny's opinion. He used words like consider, imagine, and perhaps, to plant suggestions in Vinny's subconscious mind, leading him to see things from Joey's perspective. As the negotiation progressed, Joey's suggestion techniques began to take effect. Vinny's resistance softened, and he started to show signs of agreement. Joey continued to use his suggestion techniques strategically, reinforcing his points and subtly guiding Vinny towards the deal he wanted. In the end, Joey's mastery of suggestion techniques paid off. Vinny agreed to the terms, and Joey secured the deal he was after. He credited his success to the powerful influence of suggestion techniques, which had helped him overcome Vinny's stubbornness and win the negotiation. From that day on, Joey became renowned for his skillful use of suggestion techniques in the mobster world. His reputation as a master persuader spread, and he continued to use these techniques to further his ambitions and solidify his position as a formidable player in the 1920s mobster scene. The art of suggestion became one of his most powerful tools, allowing him to navigate the treacherous world of organized crime with finesse and cunning. Anchoring. In the gritty streets of Chicago during the 1920s, Frankie the Fixer was known as a shrewd and cunning mobster. He had a reputation for always being one step ahead of his rivals, and his sharp mind and quick wit were his greatest weapons. One day, Frankie found himself in a precarious situation. He needed to strike a deal with a rival mobster, Tony the Hammer, who was known for his volatile temperament and unpredictable nature. Frankie knew that he needed to use every trick in the book to gain an advantage in the negotiation. Remembering the lessons he had learned from his mentor, Old Sal, Frankie decided to use the technique of anchoring to influence Tony's emotions and decision-making. Anchoring was a psychological phenomenon where a particular stimulus or cue was associated with a specific emotional or behavioral response, and Frankie knew it could be a powerful tool in negotiation. During the negotiation, Frankie skillfully used anchoring to create a favorable atmosphere. He chose a cozy speakeasy as the setting, with dim lighting and soft music, to set relaxed and comfortable tone. He made sure he was seated in a comfortable chair with a commanding view of the room, positioning himself as the one in control. As the negotiation progressed, Frankie strategically used anchoring to his advantage. He would emphasize certain key points with strong gestures and confident body language, anchoring them in Tony's mind as important and favorable. He would repeat certain phrases and statements, creating a mental association between those words and positive emotions in Tony's subconscious mind. Frankie also used anchoring to manage Tony's emotions. Whenever Tony became agitated or aggressive, Frankie would calmly and confidently bring his tone down and adopt a soothing demeanor, anchoring a sense of calmness and reasonableness in Tony's mind. Through his skilled use of anchoring, Frankie was able to influence Tony's emotions and decision-making in subtle yet powerful ways. Tony gradually became more receptive to Frankie's proposals, and his resistance started to crumble. In the end, Frankie's masterful use of anchoring paid off. He struck a deal with Tony that was heavily skewed in his favor, securing a significant advantage for himself and his gang. He attributed his success to the power of anchoring, which had allowed him to shape the negotiation and sway Tony's emotions and behaviors in his favor. From that day on, Frankie became known as a master of anchoring in the mobster world. His reputation as a skilled negotiator spread, and he continued to use this powerful technique to gain an edge in his dealings with rivals and further his influence in the 1920s mobster scene. Anchoring became one of his secret weapons, allowing him to manipulate perceptions and outcomes to his advantage in the ruthless world of organized crime. Rapport building. In the bustling streets of New York City during the roaring 1920s, Mickey the Smooth Operator was a well-known and respected mobster. He had a suave and charming demeanor that made him a natural at building rapport with others, and he used this skill to his advantage in the cutthroat world of organized crime. One day, Mickey found himself in a precarious situation. He needed to secure a partnership with another powerful mobster, Vinny the Enforcer, to expand his territory and increase his profits. However, Vinny was notorious for being tough and suspicious, and gaining his trust would not be easy. Drawing on his knowledge of rapport building, Mickey set out to establish a connection with Vinny. He knew that building a strong rapport was essential in negotiation, as it created a foundation of trust and understanding that could pave the way for a successful outcome. During their first meeting, Mickey focused on creating a positive and friendly atmosphere. He greeted Vinny with a warm smile, maintained eye contact, and used open and inviting body language. He also paid attention to Vinny's verbal and non-verbal cues, mirroring his gestures and expressions to establish a sense of familiarity and similarity. Mickey was also a skilled conversationalist, and he used his charm and wit to engage Vinny in meaningful conversations. He showed genuine interest in Vinny's background, experiences, and opinions, and he actively listened to what Vinny had to say. He found common interests and shared experiences that helped to create a sense of connection and trust between them. As the negotiations progressed, Mickey continued to build rapport with Vinny. He used humor, compliments, and shared stories to create a relaxed and friendly atmosphere. He also used active listening to understand Vinny's needs and concerns, and he validated his emotions and opinions. Mickey also made sure to find areas of agreement and common ground, focusing on shared interests and benefits. He highlighted how their partnership could be mutually beneficial and emphasized the advantages of working together. He also used positive language and avoided confrontational or aggressive tactics, which could have jeopardized the rapport he had built with Vinny. In the end, Mickey's rapport-building skills paid off. Vinny gradually warmed up to him and became more receptive to his proposals. They reached a mutually beneficial agreement that expanded Mickey's territory and profits, while also benefiting Vinny's operations. From that day on, Mickey's reputation as a master of rapport building grew in the mobster world. His ability to establish trust and connection with others helped him navigate the complex and dangerous world of organized crime with finesse. He continued to use this powerful skill in his negotiations and dealings, building alliances and expanding his influence in the 1920s mobster scene. Rapport building became one of his secret weapons, allowing him to establish trust, create understanding, and achieve successful outcomes in his criminal endeavors. What are some common hypnotic techniques used in negotiation, such as language patterns, suggestion techniques, anchoring, and rapport building? In the underground world of 1920s mobsters, there was one name that struck fear into the hearts of many: Tony the Hypnotist D'Angelo. Tony was not your typical mobster. He didn't rely on brute force or violence to get what he wanted. Instead, he had mastered the art of hypnotic negotiation, using subtle techniques to influence others and bend them to his will. One day, Tony found himself in a precarious situation. He needed to secure a lucrative business deal with a rival mobster, Joey the Bulldog Bianchi. Joey was known for his tough demeanor and shrewd business sense, and Tony knew he would need to use his hypnotic techniques to gain the upper hand. During their meeting at a speakeasy, Tony put his skills to work. He started with language patterns, carefully choosing his words to create a sense of comfort and familiarity. He used soft, soothing tones and paced his speech to match Joey's breathing, lulling him into a relaxed state. Tony also employed suggestion techniques, planting subtle ideas in Joey's mind. He used embedded commands, such as "You can see how beneficial this deal would be for both of us, can't you? And imagine the profits we could make together." He also used metaphors and stories to captivate Joey's imagination and lead him towards the desired outcome. To further solidify his influence, Tony used anchoring. He associated positive emotions with the idea of doing business with him. He praised Joey's business acumen and success, creating a positive association with the idea of partnering with him. He also used physical touch, such as a firm handshake and pat on the back, to anchor positive emotions and build a sense of trust and rapport. Throughout the negotiation, Tony employed his masterful rapport-building skills. He mirrored Joey's body language, maintained eye contact, and showed genuine interest in his opinions and concerns. He actively listened, validating Joey's viewpoints and showing empathy. As the negotiation progressed, Tony's hypnotic techniques began to take hold. Joey became more open to Tony's proposals, seeing the benefits of partnering with him. Tony used positive language, reinforcing the advantages of their collaboration and creating a sense of excitement and anticipation. In the end, Tony's hypnotic negotiation skills proved to be formidable. He successfully struck a deal with Joey, securing a profitable business partnership that benefited both parties. Tony's reputation as the hypnotist grew even stronger, and he continued to use his skills to navigate the dangerous world of 1920s mobsters, always staying one step ahead of his rivals. His mastery of language patterns, suggestion techniques, anchoring, and rapport building made him a force to be reckoned with in the underground business world, and he continued to amass wealth and power through his unique and powerful negotiating style. How can I effectively induce and utilize hypnotic states or principles in my negotiations to achieve my desired outcomes? In the smoky back rooms of Chicago in the 1920s, Johnny the Fixer Malone was known as a shrewd and cunning mobster. He had built his empire through calculated moves and strategic negotiations, and he had a secret weapon up his sleeve: hypnotic techniques. Johnny had learned the art of hypnotic negotiation from an old mentor who had taught him how to effectively induce and utilize hypnotic states or principles in his negotiations. He knew that mastering this skill could give him an edge in achieving his desired outcomes. One day, Johnny found himself in a heated negotiation with a rival mobster, Frankie the Shark Rossi. Frankie was notorious for his ruthless business tactics and was known to be a tough nut to crack. But Johnny was prepared. He started by creating a conducive environment for hypnosis. He chose a dimly lit room with comfortable chairs and soothing music playing in the background. He used his deep voice and commanding presence to set the tone, creating a sense of relaxation and receptiveness in Frankie. Johnny then used language patterns to influence Frankie's subconscious mind. He used carefully crafted sentences that embedded suggestions, such as "You can see how this deal would benefit both of us and imagine the possibilities of our collaboration." He used repetitive phrases and rhythmic speech to lull Frankie into a trance-like state, where he was more susceptible to his suggestions. Johnny also employed suggestion techniques to plant ideas in Frankie's mind. He used metaphors and stories to captivate his imagination and guide him towards his desired outcome. He used positive and vivid language to create a sense of excitement and anticipation, painting a compelling vision of the future with him and Frankie working together. To further anchor his suggestions, Johnny used physical cues. He made subtle hand gestures and touches, tapping into Frankie's subconscious associations and creating triggers that would later influence his decision-making. He also mirrored Frankie's body language and maintained eye contact, building rapport and trust. Throughout the negotiation, Johnny remained calm and composed, using his hypnotic techniques to stay in control. He actively listened to Frankie's concerns and addressed them with empathy and understanding. He validated Frankie's opinions and made him feel heard and respected, further deepening the rapport between them. As the negotiation progressed, Johnny could see the effects of his hypnotic techniques taking hold. Frankie's demeanor softened, and he became more open to Johnny's proposals. He started to see the benefits of working together, and his resistance began to crumble. In the end, Johnny successfully achieved his desired outcome. Frankie agreed to a favorable deal that benefited both parties, and Johnny walked away with a significant advantage in the underground business world. His mastery of hypnotic negotiation had once again proved to be a powerful tool in his arsenal, allowing him to achieve his goals and maintain his status as a respected and feared mobster in the 1920s Chicago. What is the role of the subconscious mind in negotiation, and how can it be targeted using hypnotic techniques for persuasion? In the bustling streets of New York City during the Prohibition era of the 1920s, Vincent the Enchanter Marino was a renowned mobster known for his persuasive and hypnotic negotiation skills. He understood the power of the subconscious mind and how it could be targeted using hypnotic techniques for persuasion. Vincent was a master at using language patterns, suggestion techniques, anchoring, and rapport building to influence the subconscious mind of his opponents in negotiations. He knew that the subconscious mind played a critical role in decision-making, as it operated below the level of conscious awareness and influenced thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. One day, Vincent found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with a rival mob boss, Tony the Bulldog Rossi. Tony was known for his tough and uncompromising demeanor, making negotiations with him notoriously challenging. But Vincent was undeterred. He carefully crafted his approach, creating a setting conducive to hypnosis. He chose a private room with dim lighting and comfortable chairs, and he played soft music in the background to create a relaxed atmosphere. He used his deep, mesmerizing voice to set the tone and induce a receptive state in Tony's subconscious mind. Vincent then used language patterns to weave his suggestions into his speech. He used carefully chosen words and phrases that bypassed Tony's conscious mind and directly targeted his subconscious. He used hypnotic language patterns, such as embedded commands and presuppositions, to plant ideas and influence Tony's thoughts and emotions without him even realizing it. Vincent also employed suggestion techniques to further penetrate Tony's subconscious. He used metaphors, stories, and visualizations to engage Tony's imagination and guide him towards the desired outcome. He painted vivid pictures of success and highlighted the benefits of collaboration, planting positive suggestions that would later influence Tony's decision-making process. To anchor his suggestions, Vincent used physical cues. He made subtle gestures and touches, creating triggers that would activate Tony's subconscious associations in the future. He also mirrored Tony's body language and built rapport through active listening and empathetic responses, creating a sense of trust and connection. As the negotiation progressed, Vincent could see the effects of his hypnotic techniques taking hold. Tony's demeanor softened, and he became more open to Vincent's proposals. His stubbornness waned, and he started to see the value in working together. In the end, Vincent successfully persuaded Tony to agree to a mutually beneficial deal. Tony was surprised by how easily he had been swayed, not realizing the extent to which his subconscious mind had been targeted and influenced by Vincent's hypnotic techniques. Vincent left the negotiation with a sense of triumph, knowing that his mastery of hypnotic techniques had once again given him an advantage in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. He understood that the subconscious mind played a crucial role in negotiation, and by effectively targeting it using hypnotic techniques for persuasion, he had achieved his desired outcome and solidified his reputation as the enchanter in the underworld of New York City. How can I develop rapport and establish anchoring cues with my negotiation counterpart to influence their decision-making process? In the gritty streets of Chicago during the 1920s, Tommy the Smooth Operator Thompson was a rising star in the mobster world. He had a reputation for his suave charm and smooth talking, which he used to great effect in his negotiations. One day, Tommy found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with a rival mob boss, Frankie the Bulldozer DeLuca. Frankie was known for his tough and no-nonsense approach to business, making negotiations with him notoriously challenging. But Tommy was determined to come out on top. Tommy knew that building rapport with Frankie was crucial to influencing his decision-making process. He understood that establishing a connection and creating a sense of trust would make Frankie more receptive to his proposals. He began by engaging in small talk, finding common ground, and using active listening to show genuine interest in Frankie's perspective. Tommy also paid close attention to Frankie's body language and used it to his advantage. He mirrored Frankie's posture, gestures, and facial expressions to create a subconscious sense of familiarity and similarity. He knew that people tend to be more receptive to those who are similar to themselves, so he strategically mimicked Frankie's nonverbal cues to establish rapport. To further solidify his influence, Tommy used anchoring cues. He carefully selected specific words and phrases during the negotiation that he could later use as triggers to evoke certain emotional responses in Frankie. For example, when discussing the terms of their agreement, Tommy used words like cooperation, win-win, and mutually beneficial, which he repeated throughout the conversation to anchor positive emotions in Frankie's mind. As the negotiation progressed, Tommy could see the effects of his rapport building and anchoring techniques taking hold. Frankie's demeanor softened, and he became more open to Tommy's proposals. He was more willing to consider alternative solutions and seemed more relaxed and trusting. Tommy seized the opportunity and skillfully presented his proposals, using the anchored cues to evoke positive emotions in Frankie's subconscious mind. He painted vivid pictures of success and highlighted the benefits of collaboration, using the anchored cues to trigger positive associations. In the end, Frankie agreed to a deal that was favorable to Tommy. Tommy knew that his ability to develop rapport and establish anchoring cues had played a significant role in influencing Frankie's decision-making process. Tommy left the negotiation feeling triumphant, knowing that his mastery of rapport building and anchoring techniques had given him the upper hand in the competitive world of 1920s mobsters. He understood that creating a connection, establishing trust, and using anchored cues were powerful tools in influencing decision-making in negotiations, and he was determined to continue honing his skills as the smooth operator in the ruthless world of organized crime. What are some effective language patterns and suggestion techniques that can be used in negotiation to influence perceptions and behaviors? In the bustling city of New York during the roaring 1920s, Vincent the Charmer Caruso was known as one of the smoothest and most persuasive mobsters in town. His negotiations were legendary, and he had a keen understanding of the power of language patterns and suggestion techniques. One day, Vincent found himself in a heated negotiation with a rival mobster, Tony the Hammerusso. Tony was known for his aggressive tactics and was a tough nut to crack. But Vincent was determined to sway Tony in his favor. Vincent began the negotiation by using language patterns that were designed to influence perceptions and behaviors. He used the "but you are free" technique, where he made Tony feel like he had a choice and wasn't being forced into a decision. He said things like, "Tony, you can either choose to work with me and reap the benefits, or you can continue down your current path. It's entirely up to you. Vincent also used the embedded commands technique, where he subtly embedded commands within his sentences to direct Tony's thoughts and actions. He would say things like, "Tony, you may find that it's in your best interest to see things from my perspective, or you might consider the advantages of our proposed partnership." Vincent also utilized the power of suggestion techniques during the negotiation. He used the future pacing technique, where he painted vivid pictures of the positive outcomes of their collaboration, describing how they would both benefit from working together. He also used the presuppositions technique, where he assumed that Tony was already on board with his proposals, saying things like, "When we work together, we can achieve great things." Vincent's language patterns and suggestion techniques were strategically crafted to influence Tony's perceptions and behaviors. He knew that the subconscious mind is susceptible to suggestion and that using persuasive language could shape Tony's thoughts and decision-making process. As the negotiation progressed, Vincent could see the impact of his language patterns and suggestion techniques taking hold. Tony's demeanor softened, and he became more receptive to Vincent's proposals. He started considering the advantages of working with Vincent and seemed more open to collaboration. Vincent capitalized on this opportunity and continued to use his language patterns and suggestion techniques to guide the negotiation in his favor. He maintained a confident and persuasive tone, carefully selecting his words to evoke positive emotions and influence Tony's perceptions. In the end, Vincent's mastery of effective language patterns and suggestion techniques paid off. Tony agreed to a deal that was favorable to Vincent, and they shook hands, sealing the agreement. Vincent left the negotiation with a sense of triumph, knowing that his persuasive skills had secured him a favorable outcome. He understood that language patterns and suggestion techniques were potent tools in negotiation, and he would continue to use them to his advantage in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. How can I use anchoring to create specific emotional or behavioral responses in my negotiation counterpart and influence their decision-making? In the gritty streets of Chicago during the Prohibition era of the 1920s, Frankie the Fixer Santoro was a notorious mobster known for his cunning negotiation tactics. He had a reputation for getting what he wanted, and he understood the power of anchoring to create specific emotional and behavioral responses in his negotiation counterparts. One day, Frankie found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with a rival gang leader, Johnny the Bulldog Russo. The two had clashed over territory and profits, and tensions were running high. Frankie knew that he needed to use anchoring to gain the upper hand in the negotiation. During the negotiation, Frankie skillfully used anchoring to create specific emotional and behavioral responses in Johnny. He deliberately associated positive emotions with his proposals by using visual cues and memorable phrases. For example, he would point to a stack of cash on the table and say, "Johnny, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Think of the fortune we could amass together, and the power we could wield as partners." Frankie also used anchoring to influence Johnny's decision-making process. He repeatedly emphasized the benefits of his proposals, using words like amazing, unprecedented, and game-changing. He would say things like, "Johnny, this deal is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You won't find a better offer anywhere else." Frankie was also strategic in his use of physical cues to anchor specific responses in Johnny. He would tap Johnny's shoulder or pat him on the back whenever he presented a favorable proposal, creating a positive association with those gestures. He also made sure to maintain steady eye contact and a confident posture, projecting authority and credibility. Over time, Frankie's anchoring techniques began to take effect. Johnny's emotional state shifted, and he became more receptive to Frankie's proposals. The positive associations created by Frankie's anchoring cues influenced Johnny's decision-making process, making him more inclined to accept Frankie's terms. As the negotiation progressed, Frankie continued to reinforce his anchors, using consistent language, gestures, and visual cues to create a lasting impression on Johnny. He used anchoring to trigger specific emotional responses in Johnny, such as excitement, anticipation, and greed, all of which swayed Johnny in favor of Frankie's proposals. In the end, Frankie's masterful use of anchoring helped him secure a favorable outcome in the negotiation. Johnny agreed to a deal that heavily favored Frankie, and they shook hands, sealing the agreement. Frankie knew that anchoring was a powerful tool in negotiation, and he had used it to his advantage in influencing Johnny's decision-making process. He left the negotiation with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that his skilled use of anchoring had helped him achieve his desired outcome in the competitive world of 1920s mobsters. How can I use hypnotic negotiation techniques to create a compelling and persuasive negotiation strategy? In the roaring 1920s, in the heart of New York City, Jimmy the Smooth Operator Sullivan was a renowned mobster known for his charm and persuasive negotiation skills. He had mastered the art of hypnotic negotiation techniques, which he used to create a compelling and persuasive negotiation strategy that always worked in his favor. One day, Jimmy found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with a rival mob boss, Tony the Shark Marino. They were both vying for control of a lucrative speakeasy operation in the city, and the tension was palpable as they sat across the table from each other. Jimmy knew that he needed to create a negotiation strategy that would captivate Tony and persuade him to see things from Jimmy's perspective. He began by using hypnotic language patterns, carefully chosen words and phrases that would bypass Tony's conscious mind and tap into his subconscious, where decision-making processes were often influenced. Jimmy used a variety of language patterns, such as embedded commands and presuppositions, to subtly plant suggestions in Tony's mind. He would say things like, "Tony, as you consider this proposal, you may find yourself feeling more and more inclined to see the benefits of partnering with me." He would also use open-ended questions to guide Tony's thoughts in a specific direction, such as, "Have you ever imagined the immense profits we could generate together by pooling our resources?" Jimmy also employed suggestion techniques to further enhance his persuasive negotiation strategy. He would use the power of suggestion to paint vivid pictures in Tony's mind of the successful outcomes that would result from their partnership. He would describe in detail the glamorous lifestyle they could lead, the respect and fear they would command in the criminal underworld, and the legacy they could build together. As the negotiation progressed, Jimmy also focused on building rapport with Tony. He used his natural charm and charisma to establish a connection with Tony, finding common interests and shared values. He mirrored Tony's body language and tone of voice, creating a sense of familiarity and trust between them. He also shared personal stories and anecdotes, further strengthening their rapport and deepening their relationship. In addition, Jimmy strategically used anchoring to influence Tony's decision-making process. He would link positive emotions to his proposals by using specific gestures or visual cues. For example, he would touch his lapel or snap his fingers whenever he presented a favorable proposal, creating an anchor that would trigger positive associations in Tony's mind. As the negotiation drew to a close, Jimmy's hypnotic negotiation techniques had worked their magic. Tony was captivated by Jimmy's compelling and persuasive negotiation strategy. He was swayed by the language patterns, suggestion techniques, rapport building, and anchoring that Jimmy had skillfully employed throughout the negotiation. In the end, Tony agreed to partner with Jimmy, ceding control of the speakeasy operation to him. Jimmy left the negotiation victorious, knowing that his masterful use of hypnotic negotiation techniques had created a persuasive and compelling negotiation strategy that had helped him achieve his desired outcome in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. What are some potential ethical considerations and limitations when using hypnotic techniques in negotiation, and how can I navigate them effectively? In the bustling streets of Chicago during the 1920s, Frankie the Enchanter DeLuca was a renowned mobster known for his cunning negotiation skills, which included the use of hypnotic techniques. Frankie was feared and respected for his ability to sway anyone to his advantage, but he also understood the ethical considerations and limitations when using such techniques in negotiation. One day, Frankie found himself in a tense negotiation with a rival mob boss, Don the Bulldog Moretti. They were vying for control of a lucrative gambling operation, and Frankie knew he needed to use his hypnotic techniques to gain the upper hand. Frankie was well aware that hypnotic techniques could potentially cross ethical boundaries, as they involved influencing someone's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without their full awareness or consent. He knew that using these techniques to manipulate or deceive others was unethical and could have serious consequences. To navigate these ethical considerations, Frankie made sure to use his hypnotic techniques responsibly and with integrity. He never coerced or forced anyone into making decisions against their will. He always sought to create a win-win outcome in his negotiations, where both parties felt satisfied and respected. Frankie also understood the limitations of hypnotic techniques. He knew that not everyone was susceptible to hypnosis, and some individuals might have strong resistance to it. He was mindful of cultural and personal differences, and he never used hypnotic techniques on individuals who were vulnerable or incapable of giving informed consent. As the negotiation with Don Moretti progressed, Frankie used his hypnotic techniques in a subtle and ethical manner. He employed language patterns that were persuasive but not manipulative. He used suggestion techniques to influence perceptions and behaviors positively, without resorting to deceit or trickery. He built rapport with Don Moretti based on mutual respect and understanding, rather than exploiting vulnerabilities. Frankie also understood that negotiation was a dynamic process that required active listening and effective communication. He focused on understanding Don Moretti's perspective and needs, and he used his hypnotic techniques to guide the negotiation towards a mutually beneficial outcome. In the end, Frankie's ethical approach to using hypnotic techniques in negotiation paid off. he and Don Moretti reached a fair and satisfactory agreement that respected both parties' interests. Frankie left the negotiation with his reputation as a skilled negotiator intact, knowing that he had navigated the ethical considerations and limitations of using hypnotic techniques effectively. Frankie understood that the power of hypnotic techniques came with great responsibility. He used them judiciously, always ensuring that his negotiation counterparts were aware of the influence he was exerting and had the freedom to make their own decisions. He knew that ethical negotiation was not just about achieving his desired outcome but also about maintaining integrity, respect, and fairness in his interactions with others in the criminal underworld of the 1920s. How can I practice and refine my hypnotic negotiation skills in real-world negotiation situations to achieve successful outcomes? In the smoky speakeasies of 1920s New York City, Joey the hypnotist Marino was a rising star in the world of organized crime. Known for his mastery of hypnotic negotiation techniques, Joey was always looking for ways to practice and refine his skills to achieve successful outcomes in his illicit business dealings. Joey had learned that practice was key to honing his hypnotic negotiation skills. He sought out real-world negotiation situations to put his abilities to the test. One day, Joey received a tip about a rival gang leader, Jimmy the Hammer Johnson, who was interested in striking a deal for a new bootlegging operation. Joey wasted no time and set up a meeting with Jimmy at a hidden speakeasy. Dressed in his signature fedora and suit, Joey exuded confidence as he entered the dimly lit room where Jimmy was waiting. As the negotiation started, Joey carefully assessed the situation, paying close attention to Jimmy's body language, tone of voice, and choice of words. He used his hypnotic techniques to build rapport with Jimmy, establishing a connection based on trust and mutual understanding. Joey utilized language patterns that were designed to influence perceptions and behaviors, weaving suggestions seamlessly into his conversation. He used embedded commands to guide Jimmy's thought process in a subtle yet powerful manner. He anchored positive emotions to specific cues, such as tapping his fingers or using certain phrases, to create a favorable association in Jimmy's mind. Joey also employed active listening, showing genuine interest in Jimmy's concerns and needs. He mirrored Jimmy's body language and matched his communication style, further deepening the rapport between them. He used his hypnotic techniques to direct the negotiation towards his desired outcome, while still being mindful of Jimmy's perspective. As the negotiation progressed, Joey could see the subtle shifts in Jimmy's demeanor, indicating that his hypnotic techniques were taking effect. Jimmy seemed more receptive to Joey's proposals, and his resistance began to crumble. In the final stages of the negotiation, Joey used his refined hypnotic negotiation skills to seal the deal. He employed a combination of anchoring, suggestion, and rapport-building techniques to create a compelling and persuasive argument that was hard for Jimmy to resist. Joey maintained his ethical stance, making sure that Jimmy was fully aware of the negotiation process and had the freedom to make his own decision. In the end, Joey successfully closed the deal with Jimmy, securing a lucrative bootlegging operation for his gang. He left the speakeasy with a sense of accomplishment, knowing that his practice and refinement of hypnotic negotiation skills had paid off. Joey understood that continuous practice and refinement were crucial to achieving successful outcomes in real-world negotiation situations. He was constantly seeking feedback, learning from his experiences, and improving his skills. His reputation as the hypnotist grew, and he became a formidable force in the 1920s mobster world, all thanks to his dedication to mastering the art of hypnotic negotiation. Strategy description: rapport building, establishing a connection based on trust and mutual understanding through active listening, mirroring body language, and matching communication style. Anchoring: creating specific emotional or behavioral responses by associating them with cues, such as tapping fingers or using certain phrases, to influence decision-making. Language patterns: using embedded commands, subtle suggestions, and persuasive language patterns to influence perceptions and behaviors during negotiation. Suggestion techniques: employing direct or indirect suggestions to guide the thought process and shape the negotiation outcome in a desired direction. Ethical considerations: being mindful of ethical boundaries, ensuring transparency, and respecting the autonomy of the negotiation counterpart. Practice and refinement: continuously practicing and refining hypnotic negotiation skills through real-world negotiation situations, seeking feedback, and learning from experiences. Epilogue: as the years passed, Frankie became a renowned figure in the world of negotiation. His mastery of hypnotic techniques had earned him a reputation as a formidable negotiator who could achieve remarkable outcomes. Frankie continued to refine his skills, always mindful of the ethical considerations and limitations of using hypnotic techniques in negotiation. He never abused his powers and always respected the autonomy of his negotiation counterparts, never crossing the line into manipulation or coercion. Frankie's reputation as a skilled negotiator grew, and he was sought after by high-profile clients and international organizations. His ability to establish rapport, create anchoring cues, and use language patterns and suggestion techniques to influence perceptions and behaviors gave him a distinct edge in negotiations. He became known as the hypnotic negotiator and was highly respected in the field. With his success, Frankie also took the time to mentor and train aspiring negotiators. He shared his knowledge and experience, teaching them the art of hypnotic negotiation, emphasizing the importance of practice, feedback, and continuous improvement. In time, Frankie's contributions to the field of negotiation were recognized, and he was invited to speak at conferences and seminars around the world. He became a sought-after speaker, sharing his insights and strategies on how to effectively use hypnotic techniques in negotiation to achieve successful outcomes. As he reflected on his journey, Frankie realized that his true power lay not just in the hypnotic techniques, but in his genuine understanding of human psychology, his ability to build trust and rapport, and his unwavering commitment to ethical negotiation practices. In the end, Frankie's legacy as a master negotiator was not only defined by his expertise in hypnotic techniques but also by his integrity, professionalism, and dedication to helping others succeed in their negotiations. And so, Frankie's story continued to inspire and influence negotiators around the world, leaving a lasting impact on the field of negotiation and the art of persuasive communication through hypnotic techniques. Answer key at the end of the video. 1. What is the history and background of hypnosis, and how can it be applied in negotiation settings? The book provides a historical overview of hypnosis, including its origins and development as a therapeutic technique. It explains how hypnosis has evolved and been used in various contexts, including negotiation settings. It may also discuss the ethical considerations of using hypnosis in negotiations. 2. What are the key principles and techniques of hypnosis that can be utilized in negotiations to enhance persuasion skills? The book outlines the key principles of hypnosis, including establishing rapport, inducing trance states, and utilizing suggestions. It also provides techniques for using language patterns, embedded commands, metaphors, and other hypnotic techniques in negotiations to enhance persuasion skills. 3. How can I effectively prepare for hypnotic negotiation, including building rapport, setting goals, and managing expectations? The book provides guidance on how to effectively prepare for hypnotic negotiation, including building rapport with the negotiation counterpart, setting clear goals, and managing expectations. It may also offer practical exercises and strategies for preparing mentally and emotionally for successful negotiation outcomes. 4. What are the specific language patterns and techniques used in hypnotic negotiation, and how can I apply them in a negotiation context? The book identifies specific language patterns and techniques used in hypnotic negotiation, such as embedded commands, presuppositions, and reframing. It may provide examples and guidance on how to apply these techniques in a negotiation context, including how to structure language and use hypnotic suggestions to influence outcomes. 5. How can I use hypnotic techniques to build trust with my negotiation counterpart and establish a positive rapport? The book may offer strategies and techniques for using hypnosis to build trust with the negotiation counterpart, such as creating rapport, pacing and leading, and eliciting positive emotions. It may also provide guidance on how to establish a positive rapport using nonverbal communication and other hypnotic techniques. 6. What are the ethical considerations when using hypnotic techniques in negotiations, and how can I ensure responsible and ethical use of these techniques? The book may discuss the ethical considerations of using hypnotic techniques in negotiations, including the importance of consent, transparency, and respecting the boundaries of the negotiation counterpart. It may also provide guidelines and best practices for ensuring responsible and ethical use of hypnotic techniques in negotiations. 7. How can I overcome objections and resistance in negotiations using hypnotic techniques, and how can I reframe objections or change belief systems effectively? The book may provide strategies and techniques for using hypnosis to overcome objections and resistance in negotiations, such as reframing objections, changing belief systems, and utilizing metaphors. It may also offer guidance on how to handle different types of objections and resistance effectively using hypnotic techniques. 8. What are some real-world applications of hypnotic negotiation techniques in sales, business deals, conflict resolution, and other negotiation scenarios? The book may provide real-world case studies and examples of how hypnotic negotiation techniques have been successfully applied in various negotiation scenarios, such as sales, business deals, conflict resolution, and other contexts. It may highlight practical applications of hypnotic techniques and their outcomes in different settings. 9. What are some advanced topics in hypnotic negotiation, such as dealing with difficult negotiation counterparts or enhancing negotiation skills through self-hypnosis and self-awareness? The book may delve into advanced topics in hypnotic negotiation, such as dealing with difficult negotiation counterparts, managing challenging negotiation situations, and enhancing negotiation skills through self-hypnosis and self-awareness. It may offer practical strategies and techniques for navigating complex negotiation scenarios and improving negotiation skills through self-reflective practices. 10. The book may provide practical guidance on how to apply the concepts and techniques learned to your own negotiation situations. This may include step-by-step instructions, examples, and case studies to illustrate how to incorporate hypnotic negotiation techniques into real-world negotiations. The book may also offer exercises and practice activities to help you refine your skills, such as role-playing exercises, self-reflection exercises, and self-assessment tools. Additionally, the book may provide guidance on how to practice hypnotic negotiation skills in a safe and responsible manner, such as seeking feedback from mentors or peers, recording and reviewing your negotiation sessions, and continuously refining your techniques based on feedback and results. It may also emphasize the importance of self-awareness, self-regulation, and ongoing practice to continuously improve your hypnotic negotiation skills over time. It's important to note that the application of hypnotic techniques in negotiation settings should be done ethically and with respect for the negotiation counterpart's boundaries and consent. The book may provide guidelines and best practices for responsible and ethical use of hypnotic techniques in negotiations, and stress the importance of using these skills for positive and mutually beneficial outcomes.